Evening all. Well, we've reached the halfway point in my series of the 10 most effective people on the anti-left, and my choice for number 5 on the list is Paul Joseph Watson. Now, why am I wearing this jacket? I haven't come dressed as Paul Joseph Watson, but the wacky things that happen in my house. You see, what's happened is I had a jumper on earlier. It was nice and keeping me warm as the night draws in. But what happened was that I was doing some chores and tidying up after dinner. So I took my jumper off and put it on the end of the table in the kitchen. Now I've set up the computer here in the Blanderdrome. And what's happened is that these two Furbies, these cats that I've been fostering for the last few years, have made their home, their nighttime bed on my jumper. But the thing is, youngest son is not well. He's quite poorly. He's got a tummy bug. So he's in with mum and dad tonight. So I can't sneak into my bedroom and get another jumper out of the cupboard because he's snuggled up with his mum and I don't want to disturb them. So, and if you don't believe me, look, there are the fur beasts. There they are on my jumper. Right? So there you go. So I'm wearing a padded puffer jacket because it's in the cupboard and it's keeping me warm. Okay. I've just wasted 1.5 minutes talking about that. Anyway, on to Paul Joseph Watson. Right. I quite like Paul Joseph Watson, actually. He's very blunt. When I first encountered him on the internet, yes, he was northern, he was bluff, he went for the jugular. And I was a bit, whoa, but also, I had half the people that I know on the internet telling me that he was really interesting to listen to, and he had lots of very good points about politics and society, and the other half saying that he was alt-right, he was borderline fascist. Well, I've seen a little bit of Paul Joseph Watson now, and I can safely say he is not a fascist. But he does throw up some interesting conundrums, and I want to assess who he is and what he does and what makes him very effective at being on the anti-left. Now, one of the conundrums is that he's very plain speaking. He articulates his arguments extremely well, but he is, classic Northern Englishman, says what he likes and he likes what he bloody well says, and I mean that in a good way. But he is speaks plainly. He's very much to the point. His arguments, his critique of the left is always very well thought out and gets straight to the point. He doesn't muck around. He's not like me trying to find weird metaphors and getting a bit tongue-tied. No, he is really to the point. But the flip side of that is that his main platform in the last few years has been Alex Jones's Infowars. He is a big contributor to Infowars. And Alex Jones is this sort of screeching, hysterical conspiracy theorist, who can see conspiracies about frogs turning gay and absolutely everyone except for Lee Harvey Oswald being involved in JFK's killing. And I'd have no idea where he stands on the moon, but he thinks the Queen, God bless her, is a lizard person. So he's off the deep end, although I've never quite understood whether Alex Jones is all mouth and show or whether he actually believes in a lot of the stuff he says. But Paul Joseph Watson is the opposite. He usually argues from a facts-based narrative, but even if they're not facts-based, they're very stripped-down critiques and arguments that he puts. They're not conspiracy theories. What he says is a lot of common sense. It just seems odd that his platform is Infowars and not somewhere else. But at the same time, I think you can look at Paul Joseph Watson and say, he himself has said that Alex Jones talks a lot of nonsense about conspiracy theories. So he's in Infowars, but he's not defined by Infowars. He's like a separate entity within the Infowars bubble. But Watson is a tricky character for the left to pin down. And obviously, like most people on my list, have been tagged with the fascist alt-right label, although there is nothing that he has said that can even remotely put him down as a fascist or alt-right. He is very much a defender of classical liberal principles, although even as we speak, classical liberalism, the idea of freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of inquiry, a small state, personal responsibility is being branded as fascist. And that's a video for another day, which I really want to do, which is debunking the claims of the left as to what liberalism is. Anyone who says that classical liberalism is just code word for fascism is a liar, and I'll call them out. So, hey, anybody, Twitterati, let's have an argument about that sometime, because you're lying. But back to Watson. So Watson does go for the jugular. Why isn't he high on the list? Now, I had this discussion, an online discussion with Academic Agent about Paul Joseph Watson versus Ben Shapiro, who is the more effective. And why haven't I put Paul Joseph Watson high on my list as 5? I mean, he's already beaten a few sort of very well-established politicians on this list. But I think there is something. There is a line with Paul Joseph Watson that he hasn't crossed to make himself truly mainstream and truly well known as a commentator, say as much as Shapiro has. And I think that's because of this bluntness, of this plain speaking. Now, one thing I said about Shapiro is that he can reach out into normie land where Watson can't. Watson's great at preaching to the converted, and he's great at preaching to people who are coming away from the left, who are disillusioned with the left and disenchanted. And he's very good at being a plain speaking advocate of classical liberal principles in the face of the left. But to most normies, they're just going to see the blunt, go for the jugular, slightly shouty and sweary polemicist. And I think, I mean, on the one hand, that is Watson's strength, that is his brand, that's who he is. But on the other hand, I think it is it's a ceiling that he has to operate under, because he cannot, I think, reach truly into the divide. He is not going to appeal at first to liberals. When I talk about that, I'm talking about the centre to the centre left. It's very difficult for him to make big inroads there, as we're trying to stage an intervention, trying to get the centre and the centre left to realise the true horror of the far left, instead of being dragged down into it. And I think that's where his limitations are. Unfortunately, I think more people should give Paul Joseph Watson a go. I mean, if you've not seen any of his videos, do go and check him out online. Yeah, he still has a Twitter account, and check him out on YouTube and other platforms. Just give him a bit of a listen, and don't go on the impressions of how he talks, which is very in your face. But listen to the content of what he's saying, because, as I said, very few people are as good as putting a very stripped down, plain speaking, very well constructed argument as he does. He has this great ability. And that's why Paul Joseph Watson is number 5 on my list. And tune in next time. We're counting down from 10 down to 1. So we'll be getting the number 4 then. Until then, have a great few days. I will catch you later. And go on, clear off, cats. Clear off, clear off. Nah, they're settled for the night. Oh well, nice jacket.